Thomas and Friends has been one of the longest running shows since 1984. Originally it used models, but transitioned to CGI following 2008. It's really come a long way, and I was glad to be one of the people working on it. I worked for Hit Entertainment as one of the writers for the show. I still do, but I no longer work on it. Since Mattel has recently bought Hit, they're completely changing the show into something called Thomas and Friends, Big World, Big Adventures. I'm pretty sure that's gonna suck. The main reason I stopped working on the show was because my favorite two characters, Edward and Henry, got the boot to be replaced by two female characters, which I hated. Mattel thought it was better this way because the Steam team was unbalanced in terms of gender, with only one female engine. However, I thought this was a horrible idea because Thomas and Friends had already had an almost equal audience of male and female viewers, thus rendering the addition of these characters completely pointless besides benefiting to the plot, which is Thomas going on an adventure around the world with one of the female characters. Instead of working on the show, I created individual shorts with a group of my favorite co-workers, which are most often focused on Edward and Henry rather than Thomas. They were aired on TV but also uploaded to YouTube. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's time to get to the point. It's March 5th, 2015. The Adventure Begins, my favorite Thomas special, had just been released 2 days earlier, March 3rd. I was proud of myself for helping with it. That day, I was browsing through a bunch of documents about the show when I discovered one called Thomas and the Unfinished Bridge, Restricted. This got me confused. I kept track of all the episodes, and I knew that there wasn't one called Thomas and the Unfinished Bridge. I asked my boss about this document. Oh, that? Well, in 1998, an episode was going to be made called Thomas and the Unfinished Bridge, but it was never aired. Why? Well, it was supposed to be a regular episode, although it wasn't part of the season, as the last season before the episode was made in 1986, as you know. The episode was supposed to happen like this. Thomas was doing something normal and his brakes began to fail. He was going towards an unfinished bridge with a bunch of passengers inside a coach he was pulling. Luckily, Edward saw this and managed to stop Thomas by coupling up to the coach and applying his brakes. Somebody working at the company made a draft of the episode and sent it to the show's main creators in a VHS tape. I think his name was Eric. Then the company noticed some things in the draft. They fired the person who made it and canceled the entire episode. But why? We don't even know. We don't want to either. And what happened to the VHS tape? I've been told that the company kept it, but it was stolen by somebody. No one knows where it went. This was sort of creepy. I should have ignored this Thomas and the Unfinished Bridge thing, but my curiosity often overpowered me in my life, and this was one of those occasions. When I got home that day, I searched Amazon for anything called Thomas and the Unfinished Bridge. Surprisingly enough, I actually found an old VHS tape with that name being sold by an account, which had a username of a bunch of random characters, letters and numbers specifically. I found this odd and thought maybe I should stop there, but the curiosity took a hold of me again. I ordered the VHS tape. It took 8 days for the tape to arrive before it finally did on March 13th. Friday the 13th to be exact. What an odd coincidence. I connected a VCR to my TV and inserted the tape into the player. What was supposedly on the tape began to play. It's kinda hard to look back at what I saw. I could say too scary, dark, and depressing for a supposed children's show at the time. There was no intro to the series. Instead, the episode just started. This was understandable because the tape contained a draft. It started off normally enough with the shot of Thomas chugging through a forest happily, carrying a coach full of passengers behind him. There were 2 things that were slightly odd though. First off, there was no narration, even though there is narration in practically every other episode of the show. Second, instead of pulling Annie and Clarabelle like he usually does while transporting passengers, Thomas was pulling a faceless coach. The episode then showed Thomas approaching a station, presumably one where he would drop off the passengers. He tried to apply his brakes and they failed. That is exactly what my boss said was supposed to happen. Thomas went through the station unable to stop as the people on the station gave confused looks. The classic runaway theme used in the show during situations similar to these started happening. I knew that at this point, then there was trouble. Next, there was a shot of the front of Thomas. There was a scared expression on his face. Then a shot from behind him appeared. It showed him passing a sign reading, "Warning, unfinished bridge ahead." This episode was already slightly intense for children, but didn't seem too bad yet. Then there was a shot of the passengers inside the coach. They were all screaming in terror, and their screams seemed realistic as well. Later, a wide shot showed Thomas passing a siding where Edward was resting. Edward noticed what was happening and sped onto the track, going towards Thomas. Soon he got to the coach. However, since it was a coach, there was no one there to couple Edward up to it. This was a serious problem. Then, another shot of the inside of the coach with more realistic screams. Then there was an extremely wide shot of Thomas getting dangerously close to the unfinished bridge. Then there was a shot of the inside of Thomas's cabin. His driver said, "The brakes are working again." By far, that was the only speaking line in the entire episode, besides the screams. Then it showed Thomas. He was probably supposed to apply his brakes, but he didn't. Instead, he smiled and sped up even faster. Now things were seriously getting messed up. The runaway theme began to lower in pitch, becoming distorted and demonic almost, with screams playing in the background. Thomas began to laugh. Then, as I watched with horror, he plunged straight over the side of the bridge with the coach. As I saw Edward brake behind him just before he went over too. Thomas and the coach landed on a bunch of rocks, getting battered before falling into a stream. There was one more shot of the inside of the coach, now half submerged in water. Dead bodies were floating everywhere. The screen faded to static for about 10 seconds before a new scene was shown. Edward was watching in terror as Sir Topham Hatt used a blowtorch to take off of Thomas's face, which showed an expression of pure pain and horror. Tears were running down his cheeks. Then Sir Topham Hatt took took off his face, which immediately became lifeless, and threw it into a nearby pool of molten metal. The mace face melted away. "You deserve this, and much more," Sir Topham Hatt said angrily. 10 more seconds of static before another scene happened. Edward was in the smelter's shed. Both his driver and fireman were nowhere to be seen. His tender wasn't there either. "Without Thomas, I am worthless. I must join him again." I watched as a claw came down and grabbed him. It pulled him upward and dropped Edward to the huge pool of molten metal. He melted in the pool on screen. His face melted last, which was horrifying enough. But was even worse was that just before his face melted, it could be seen that he had an expression of happiness. The episode ended with static. I took the VHS tape out of the VCR and stored it in an attic forever. Nobody would ever see this horrific excuse for an episode again. Later, I noticed that the username of the Amazon account which sold me the tape wasn't just random letters and numbers. It was something encoded in base 64. An encoding scheme that converted words into random letters, numbers, and sometimes other characters. After running the username through a base 64 decoder, it came out as a URL for the website. When I visited the website, it was just a couple of sentences written on a blank page. But those 2 sentences I will never forget for the rest of my life. Children need to know what really happens in the world. I'll make sure it's not hidden